This week's Device Talks weekly podcast is brought to you by Device Talks Tuesdays. Join us this Tuesday at 4 p.m. to hear from our friends at Implexer. They're going to tell you what you need to do to ensure that your content system is ready for regulators. Go to DeviceTalks.com to register. It's free and you should be there. All right, you ready for this?
Ready.
Tom Salemi, welcome to the Device Talks weekly podcast, episode number 49. That's right, the big 5-0 is coming up, and I'm ready for it. I've been there, been through it. It's not so bad, and next week is going to be great, but this week is equally great because I had a chance to speak with Shacey Petrovic. She is the CEO and president of Insulet, a local Boston area company, north of Boston at least, but it's Massachusetts. Yay! And we had a fantastic conversation about her move into medtech, how she became CEO at the company, and what their strategy is for helping people with type 1 and type 2 diabetes. They have great technologies of working with other companies like Abbott and Dexcom. It's a real, I think, success, a medtech success story. So happy to bring you that story. We're also going to have a little preview of a discussion we're going to have on Clubhouse. The discussion on Clubhouse will take place at 11:30 a.m. Eastern, but stay tuned and you'll hear more details coming up. We'll, of course, have Newmarker's Newsmakers for you. Absolutely will. And we'll also hear from our two great sponsors, PacWorld USA and PSN Labs. Now, without any further delay, it's time to bring in Chris Newmarker. Chris Newmarker, happy Friday.
Happy Friday, Tom. Good to be here, man.
Yeah, we normally do this on Thursday, but to be honest, we got a whole bunch of good news. Well, big news on Friday. Some of it good, some of it not. So we wanted to bring the absolute latest to our Device Talks weekly podcast listeners.
Great. It's Friday. It's actually nice doing on Friday. Friday is, I love my job, but, it's always nice, to get to a Friday and you're like, hey, I got a good week done and looking forward to the weekend. And hey, it's getting warmer here in Minnesota. That's always good. Is it getting warmer in Massachusetts?
It's a delightful day here in Massachusetts, where we have this saying. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. Thank God it's Friday. Have you heard of that one?
I have.
No, I thought that was local. That's
Yeah, I think there's even a restaurant chain still around that uses that phrase.
Is that what that stands for?
Yeah,
I would always say, let's go to eat to gifts, and people would look at me funny. So, all right.
Who knew?
Who knew? What is number 5 on the Newmarker's Newsmakers list, Chris Newmarker?
Well, number 5 on the list, we've got, Baxter is going to make Moderna's COVID-19 vaccine right here in the U.S. They're going to make
USA.
USA. They're going to make 60 to 90 million doses in 2021. That's the plan, and they're going to be making it at the Baxter Biopharma Solutions facilities in Bloomington, Indiana. So, yeah, USA, Hoosiers.
President Biden says we will all be vaccinated by July 4th, so I hope this will help toward that.
Man, I hope so. I'm looking forward to a nice big family barbecue at the Newmarker homestead on July 4th. That sounds like a plan to me, and I like this, get the vaccines available to everybody on May Day, too. I hope, here's to hoping that works out, too. So just feeling better every day, Tom.
Every day's a little bit better, which is the right direction to go. Speaking of better, let's move up the ladder to number 4. What is number 4 in the Newmarker's Newsmakers list?
Number 4, there's going to be Boston Science going to be expanding its Maple Grove, Minnesota campus. For those who don't know Boston Sci a lot, they're Boston Sci. They're based in your neck of the woods, Tom. But they got a big presence here in the Twin Cities. Roughly 7,500 employees actually. And they've got a big campus in Maple Grove in the West Metro. Then you move over to the other side of the metro, they got a big campus in Arden Hills, but they're going to be building a 4th building in Maple Grove, roughly 76,000 square feet. No plans for hiring more people, at least initially, because this is just about expanding an existing nitinol stent manufacturing line. But, this move is going to be opening up, space where that line used to be. And, they mentioned future, increased needs for, new new product lines in the future. So, hey, I mean, this is a sign that there could be more growth in Maple Grove in the future as well. But I mean, they just had like drug-eluting stent devices that have been, really successful, such as Illuvia and Nova. Like a spokesperson for the company said, like this expansion is just another sign of, how much those lines are going to grow even more.
I've been to obviously Minneapolis and to Edina. Am I saying that right? But Edina. Thank you. But Maple Grove, just the name sounds so pleasant. I just want to go to Maple Grove and lie out in a grove of maples. Is it a pleasant place, Maple Grove?
It's it's a suburb, but it's a nice suburb, and really actually kind of like grown a lot in the last decade or so. They even have a brand new. Well, actually, it's not brand new. When I started as a healthcare reporter here, over a decade ago, it was brand new. That was like one of my first stories around here. Was going to visit the Maple Grove Hospital. Had that new hospital smell, I guess.
I love that new hospital smell.
I'm like that new. It's like it's brand new, but yeah, it's new. It's got that new suburb feel. It's kind of like
That sounds great. All right, well, let's move on down the list to number 3. What is number 3 on the Newmarker's Newsmakers list, Chris?
Number 3 on the list is, we've got a really nice roundup / slideshow that's in full on our sister site, Drug Delivery Business News. It's just a really good timeline from our farm editor, Brian Bunce, on, the actually pretty new history of the continuous glucose monitor. It kind of travels through the past 20 years of, CGM development, all these products coming out. It's pretty fun, actually. I mean, it's neat to, start out way back in, 1999 and, the early 2000s and see these like CGM devices that look kind of like yeah, I mean, they look like pagers. I mean, when they started out, they looked like pagers, and now we're like, here we are, with, these devices just look so sleek. I mean, they run on smartphones. They last for days, even weeks. I mean, it's just pretty astounding, just like how over 20 years these devices have gotten so much better and really make a difference in the lives of a lot of people with diabetes. Really help them. Later on. We'll be running our conversation with Shacey Petrovic from Insulet, awesome.
And she's really got a great program going on there. And we just had a really excellent conversation about really how close these companies are to their patient communities. And you're right, the tech that they're starting to build into their systems of delivering glucose, it's going to make people's lives a lot easier. She said that type 1 diabetic who has to apply insulin and just monitor their diet and their exercise and everything has to make 300 decisions a day, wow. Which just sounds to me like you have another child or another full-time job. So it's excellent that this technology keeps getting better and better.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, it's a really great example of how medtech at its best can really just change people's lives for the better.
Absolutely. Hey everyone, this is Tom. Got a great interview coming up, a shorter interview coming up with Dr. Niki Panich. She is the co-founder and CEO of a company called Calameo. Calameo is making basically a countertop point-of-care solution to process N95 masks. It uses heat rather than chemicals, and it's a product that was developed when Dr. Panich was working as part of the Stanford Biomedical Program. She was attending the business school and became involved with the biomedical program. We'll talk a little bit about the company and about the product and about her entrepreneurial process in this interview, but it's very short because I want you to join us on Clubhouse at 11:30 a.m. Eastern this Monday. Niki Panich will be on with us. She'll share her story. I'll talk to her a bit. But this is an opportunity for you to come with your questions, for you to come with your entrepreneurial stories as well. So let's listen to this short interview with Dr. Niki Panich. Again, she is the CEO of a company called Calameo, and they have produced Calameo Clean, which is a desktop way of disinfecting N95 masks, but she's also a working physician and she has a family. So this is a great opportunity for you to learn how she managed to also start a company. But first, we're going to hear from one of our sponsors, PacWorld USA. We learned a lot about PacWorld USA in last week's episode. This week, sales manager Brandon Hoser is back. He's going to tell us why PacWorld's Toss Advantage helps the company stand out from competitors.
PacWorld heat sealers use TOS technology, which is an advanced form of impulse heat sealing. In a generic sense, impulse heat sealing powers a heating element or heat seal band only during an active sealing cycle. Unlike constant heat methods, impulse enables a cooling period where power is turned off to the heat seal band and heat dissipates for a specific amount of time or to a specific temperature. A cooling cycle allows now molten material to cool and solidify, which ensures great hermetic and cosmetic heat seals. Not all impulse heat sealers are created equal. Low-cost machines controlled by a potentiometer only vary the amount of power to the heat seal bands and do not have any real means of temperature control, which is required in a validated process. Other forms of impulse heat sealers use thermocouples to control the temperature on the heat seal bands. Thermocouples have some inherent flaws, such as slow response time and only measuring a single point of the heat seal band. TOS technology used in a Packworld heat sealing machine is more sophisticated, using what we call variable resistance control. This means the heat seal controller knows what the resistance of the heat seal band is at all times, and that resistance correlates with precise temperature. The system then applies power and modulates to hold a precise resistance and therefore temperature. All of this happens in milliseconds, with a controller able to read 60 times per second. No thermocouples are needed, avoiding their inherent flaws. Because of TOS technology, Packworld heat sealers are able to be validated and provide perfect heat seals from first to last and one machine to the next.
For more information, go to packworldusa.com. Well, Niki Panich, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's great to have you. So how did you come up with the concept for Calameo Clean? It's a point-of-care solution to process N95 masks. I know the fellows will go to a hospital, obviously, and they'll observe and they'll try to identify points that or problems that need to be solved. This one is clearly a problem that I think everyone knew about. How did your group kind of focus on finding a solution for this?
So I would say we were really focused on, as I said, we were working in the infection space and really had our finger on the pulse of what was coming out. Some of the research for heat as a solution for mask reuse actually came out of Stanford. And so we were lucky to be privy to information, as at the moment it was released and really decided to capitalize on that and that the world needed, as many different types of solutions for the problem that we could foresee was going to happen.
Mm-hmm. And what was the process like of starting the company? I know you worked with the Fogarty Innovation or formerly the Fogarty Institute earlier on. How did that come about? What was that experience like?
So as I said, the Stanford Biodesign program was a 6-month program. And at the end of the program, each of the different groups had an opportunity to present for summer funding. And representatives from Fogarty Innovation were part of the judging group. And so we were connected with them and we were recipients of funding to continue our work beyond the 6-month program. And we're very blessed to have the Fogarty Innovation team as mentors for us. There is no way that we could have achieved what we did in the amount of time that we did without their mentorship. And I would be remiss if I did not mention our engineering partner. So we, towards the end of our 6 months at Stanford Biodesign, we're starting to reach out to have some assistance with the engineering work that we were doing. And we landed upon Phoenix Ventures, and the CEO there is very innovative in how he thinks. And so we've actually done a collaboration with them in many ways. So they've been our engineering partners. And again, there is no way that we could have achieved the timelines that we did without that partnership as well.
I see. Okay. So what is the plan next for Calameo Clean? Are you commercialized? You're selling this?
Yeah. So our very first product, the Calameo Clean device, is now officially out on the market for sale. And we would love to see this go everywhere because we know that the world needs this. I think the thing that makes us unique is that we're really focused on point of care. The way that N95s work is that they're fitted to your face. And there's a concern reusing a mask that has been worn by somebody else. We've heard stories about makeup and other people's personal makeup and what have you being there, and people don't like that. But also a concern about the mask not forming a complete seal, and without forming a complete seal, it's just not effective. And so being able to know where your mask has been and be able to place your mask back on, I think is a really unique feature that we offer for our customers.
Thanks, Dr. Niki Panich. Again, join us at 11:30 a.m. Eastern on Clubhouse. You can find the Device Talks group, and we will have our discussion there. What's number 2 on the Newmarker's Newsmakers list?
Okay, number 2 on the list is Abbott is announcing a pandemic defense coalition that's going to be
cool.
Yeah, and it's going to be monitoring around the world for future pandemic threats, and they've got tons of partners, with this already. Everything from they've got outfits like in all kinds of countries, ranging from Colombia to Thailand to South Africa to India. And this really isn't. Abbott has some really good experience with that, actually, specifically with the HIV virus. I mean, they've been monitoring the HIV virus for decades. They actually, some of their researchers just recently announced they'd found a subset of people in Central Africa who had seemed to have like really good their bodies seem to be handling the HIV virus much better than most people without any drugs. And so, that group of people could be really helpful to find much better HIV treatments in the future, maybe even a cure. So they know about monitoring potentially deadly viruses, and for them to be saying, hey, we're going to make this big effort, monitor for future pandemic threats. Here's to hoping that they can head off a future pandemic at the pass, and prevent something like this from happening again.
All right, bring it home, Chris Newmarker. What's number 1 on the big NN list?
Hey, number 1 on the list. We had a really good news conference yesterday from AdvaMed's top officials. About everything that's gone on so far with the new Biden administration, and it was interesting that they're pretty positive so far on what's been going on. It helps that the pandemic relief bill that Biden just signed includes like $500 million in extra general purpose funding for FDA. That should hopefully help FDA be more responsive to the industry. AdvaMed CEO Scott Whitaker was saying he was hoping that the money was spent wisely, but so far so good, it seems. He had some interesting things to say about the fact that we don't have an FDA commissioner yet, at least a full-time FDA commissioner. He was saying that actually sounds like he was kind of glad that the Biden administration was taking its time, and that you want to make sure you have somebody who is going to be really good in that job. It's an extremely crucial job right now, and and it's okay right now because they've got FDA veteran Janet Woodcock as acting commissioner. So, but it'd be good to get somebody who's just got really good credentials, can really lead FDA as we get out of this pandemic. There'd be some interesting questions for FDA too. Because you're kind of looking at all these EUAs that FDA has granted, like how are we going to do permanent authorizations around that, all that stuff. There's going to be a lot to navigate.
Was there any? I haven't seen any discussion about the Breakthrough Devices program. I imagine that's whatever was adopted during the Trump administration will remain in place. Doesn't seem like there's any discussion about it not being.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything about that changing. The 510K reforms. As I said, that is one reason why it'd be nice to get a permanent commissioner in there soon, so that we can. Because I'm sure the new commissioner is going to kind of shape the agency around whatever, he or she wants to do with it.
Well, the relationship between the agency and industry seems to continue to get better.
It seems to have been getting better. It was getting
better.
Let's
hope there's no step back.
Yeah, exactly. It seemed to be getting better in in the Obama years, and it was a good relationship through the Trump years. So yeah, at least so far, the industry seems to be given a pat on the back to the Biden administration so far. So we'll see how it goes.
Now it's time for our keynote conversation. I had a great talk with Shacey Petrovic. She is the CEO and president of Insulet. I know you'll enjoy this conversation, but first, let's hear from our friends at PSN Labs. Well, we're here with PSN Labs President Mike Alibrand. Mike, we learned a lot about PSN Labs last week. One question I had was about your LSR program. Tell us a bit about LSRs.
Absolutely. So liquid silicone rubber, or LSR, is an elastomer material. It has a wide range of softness. So Sure durometer of 5 up to, say, 90 is pretty common. It's a 2-part mixed material, usually. So it's a thermosetting material. It has extreme temperature use. So whether it's low temperature of, say, -55 to upwards of 300 C, it's pretty dynamic in the application that it can be used for. It's often used in medical devices because of its soft touch feel or conformable nature.
And what medical device makers are you working with? What type of companies need to know more about this technology?
Good question, Tom. And it's all across the board. We're working with a lot of OEMs that are creating wearable devices for a number of reasons. So like I mentioned before, it gives that soft, nice feel. So you could use it on the exterior of the medical device, so it feels good against your skin. But also because of that soft, conformable nature, it's used for seals within components. And how well that material seals is a product of how it's processed. So that is a bit of a science in of itself, figuring out that right time temperature relationship to give you the proper cure and therefore process for this material.
Are there a lot of other companies out there working with LSR technology?
There are companies out there, but there aren't near as many as there are working in traditional thermoplastics. So for example, in our geographic location, I'm not aware of another facility within 100 miles that allows one to come in and do R&D development. You do tend to find this development available. However, those folks are usually big processors and they're hand to mouth to keep up with production. So to interrupt that production to do R&D can be a bit of a tall challenge, which makes us an attractive partner for our clients.
For more information, go to psnlabs.com. Well, Shacey Petrovic, welcome to the podcast.
Great to be here, Tom.
It's nice to finally have a Massachusetts person on the program. I've been too Minnesota heavy these days, so
it's been too long. There's so much med tech here.
That's right. So you were kind enough to be a keynote address at our DeviceTalks back in 2019, which feels like 1920. I don't know. It just it's forever ago. And I think that I watched that video. I think that was your first keynote as CEO. You became CEO that year, and I can't imagine a more difficult sophomore year, at least in terms of a global sense. You had some challenges. So let's get into those in a moment. But first, I really love to learn how folks found their way into the medtech industry. So what was your entry point?
Sure. I had always envisioned that I would go into research and development. Actually, I loved innovation, and I have a double major in biology and comparative literature, which is bizarre. I mean, I can tell you I was a bit, schizophrenic when I was a student, but so that's where I thought I was headed. And I spent a summer doing research in a lab and then realized very quickly that it actually wasn't for me. It was too isolating. Yeah. And so I my first job out of college was pharmaceutical sales. And it was a way to combine my love of science and, some of my interest around business and commercial, and kind of went from there. I actually, really did not love the pharmaceutical industry and selling for them, but I quickly got into med tech. My next job was with an early stage commercial company where I was employee number 100, Cytech, actually based here in Massachusetts. And that's really where I built my commercial career. And Cytech was eventually acquired by Hologic.
And so it begins.
Yep. And so then I stayed on, and I spent 14 years there between the two of those companies.
That's quite a 180 from a research position to a sales position. I mean, you have to be a complete extrovert, I think, to really survive in the sales industry. Was that why you're more comfortable or? I
think so. I was researching the estrogen cycle of doves because it most closely resembled that of humans. And so I was stuck in a lab with, 1,000 doves monitoring them. And it just wasn't a good fit for me. So
how could you not love that? It sounds like the ideal working situation. My God. So you joined Cytech, and was it because you were interested in women's health, or it was obviously it was a hot company at the time? It and Hologic were sort of the two rising women's health companies, and it was sort of a surprise when they ultimately merged. But what led to the opportunity in Cytech?
Well, I was really interested just in innovation, and they were changing the world in terms of moving from conventional Pap tests to liquid-based cytology. And I loved that it was at the sort of, precipice before all of that change was going to happen. And so, really that's why I joined. I built my career in women's health. I spent, like I said, almost 15 years between the two companies there. Mm-hmm. So I did fall in love with, the innovation that was happening in women's health, the impact that I could make, and just my personal connection, obviously, to the space. And actually, after Hologic, I went and ran a small women's healthcare company, a private company in Utah that has since been acquired by Laborie.
When did you realize, again, it was from going to education where you had comparative literature and science to getting into sales. And then ultimately, at some point, you must have realized you wanted to run a company, you wanted to be a CEO. What do you know when that point was? Did it just feel like a natural progression, or did you?
It really did feel like a natural progression. When I was in sales, I very quickly wanted to get into marketing. I wanted to get upstream in terms of the strategy, not just the execution. I actually think the execution is great foundation for eventually, being involved in the strategy, because you're much more pragmatic and I think effective in terms of developing strategy if you've been involved firsthand in the execution. So I moved, from sales into marketing leadership. And that is, in my mind, kind of the nerve center of any company, because it really does connect with every function in the organization, really directly involved. And so I loved that. And that I moved from marketing into general management. And then I was recruited away from my first CEO job. And what was attractive to me about that was the opportunity to build something as opposed to lead a division within a large company, and just the authorship, that I could have over something like that. But I wasn't really aiming to be a CEO. I was eventually recruited to become one, but not really, something that I sort of thought I wanted to do.
Sure.
And then, of course, I loved it. So it's been a great run.
So yeah, let's talk then about the switch over to Insulet to be Chief Commercial Officer.
That's right. Yeah.
So what was the appeal of that? Had Clinical Innovations, the company you were leading, had that already been sold at that point, or did it get sold after?
No, it was in process.
Okay, so you knew the writing was on the wall.
It did, yeah. It was a bit uncertain, but it looked, like it was going to happen. No, Pat, my predecessor, CEO here at Insulet, is actually the former CEO of SciTech.
That's right.
So because I had built, a lot of my early career there, we knew each other pretty well. And he called me and said, "Shacey, I want you to come be my Chief Commercial Officer." And I said, "Well, Pat, I'm a CEO now. Didn't you hear?" And he said, "Well, look, Shacey, I don't want to do this forever. I came out of retirement. This could be your opportunity to eventually run a public company. If it goes well, I need a successor. And the technology is remarkable. And we can fix these problems together." And so he sent me a link to Omnipod, which is Insulet's product. And he had no idea that my father lives with type 1 diabetes.
Oh, wow.
And that I really had grown up with the disease and its impact on families and people. And so I was immediately taken for a variety of reasons with the technology and the opportunity. And that's really what convinced me to come over. I was living in Utah at the time. And so moved my family back to Boston. And, it was just an incredible opportunity. The market is enormous. The technology is differentiated. And at that time, we were very small, really, with an opportunity to, I think, changed the game quite a bit. And so that's where we've been focused over the last 6 years. And I don't regret the decision at all. It was probably one of the best decisions I've made in my career.
Clearly. So it's interesting about your dad. And what is it about the diabetes community? I think in all of medtech, there's no stronger relationship between customer and company. Is that true?
I think that's absolutely true. And there's a variety of reasons for that. It's an incredibly engaged community. Obviously, we serve both the type 1 and the type 2 community. But the type 1 community in particular, a group of incredibly engaged, incredibly empowered users that have really driven innovation in this space. They've driven regulatory policy changes. They've driven access changes. So they're powerful. And what's so interesting is the intimacy that we have with our customers in this space. You think about typical med tech and everything in my career prior to Insulet, you are selling and marketing to a number of physicians or to a number of hospitals or to a number of clinics in the thousands, maybe tens of thousands, depending on your space. For a variety of reasons, in the insulin pump and Omnipod, insulin pod market, we are providers. So we do the benefits investigation.
Oh, really?
We deliver benefits to the patient. We deliver the product directly to the patient. We train the patient. And then we typically support the patient for the first number of weeks or months to make sure that they get off successfully on the technology. And so it creates an incredible closeness to your end user, which is wonderful. It's part of our mission. It informs our culture. And it is one of the most fulfilling parts of my job.
I would think, and this isn't to denigrate any other specialty, but to be a salesperson in this type of field requires a different, perhaps, personality to deal with the patient directly as opposed to just dealing with physicians. Is that true?
I think that's right, Tom. In fact, this week we had our national sales meeting, and I was reflecting on just what I heard from our team during the awards night, which was last night, actually. In our field, we've got every territory has at least one clinician, so a certified diabetes educator or a nurse who is partnered with a more traditional, med tech salesperson. But they work very much in tandem and as a team, which means both of them have, a strong connection to the patient, the end user of the device. And the way they talked about, what drove them, every person got up and talked about the number of lives that they changed this last year. It wasn't about their revenue or the number of Omnipods that they sold. It was about the number of lives that they had changed in the last year. I mean, that is our culture here at Insulet. It's very powerful and really it makes it a terrific place to work.
That's terrific. So let's take a moment and just back up and just tell our listeners a bit about Omnipod.
Sure. So Insulet is a company whose mission it is to improve the lives of people living with diabetes. And we do that through Omnipod, which is our really differentiated technology. It is a disposable, waterproof pod that you wear anywhere on your body that you would give yourself an injection. And it delivers 3 days of nonstop insulin for people who require it. And it's controlled by a handheld controller that looks just like in fact, it is a lockdown cell phone. And you program your dose of insulin. You can enter your food and it will deliver the appropriate amount of insulin on a daily basis. And then every 3 days, you dispose of that pod and put on a new one. It is very differentiated from what other choices a person living with diabetes has. So, somebody who's living and requires insulin on a daily basis can either inject themselves 4 to 5 times a day. So for that, compared to that, multiple daily injections, one pod replaces up to 15 injections over 3 days. Or you can wear a tubed insulin pump, which is a small piece of capital equipment that is connected to your abdomen via 3 to 4 feet of tubing. And then you control the insulin delivery based on that little pager-like device, basically, that you're wearing on your hip that's attached to the tubing. So those are the choices that you have besides Omnipod. It's been very differentiated and really helping us to bring more, we call pod and pump therapy, continually infused insulin. And we bring that technology to more people because the pod is simple, it's easy to use, and it's discreet.
That's amazing. And I think that speaks to why diabetes is so engaged. I mean, I can't think of a disease where I think they're probably thinking, and I'm fortunate not to have it, but I imagine you're thinking of it almost every minute of the day, everything you eat, every step you take, every action you take.
Actually, Tom, it's a great observation. A person living with diabetes makes 300 decisions a day.
Wow, really?
Yeah. And I think it's a great observation too about why we have such intimacy with our customers, because somebody who lives with and relies on our technology is interacting with it very frequently. You think about that. No other disease state really do you dose yourself with a potentially lethal drug every day, and we're expecting people to do that successfully. And to do that successfully, the technology has to be pretty easy to use, pretty user-friendly.
And on the outside, they look healthy and they're expected to hold jobs and raise kids and have families, but yet they're managing this as well. It's like another full-time job.
That's right.
So how do you build a market in this industry? Because I imagine that there are just preferences to technologies that some people may prefer Omnipod, some people may prefer something else, just because it's like I'm holding up my phone, we prefer iPhones over Droids. There might be a preference. I like that input better, or this doesn't hurt as much, or how do you sort of build a market in this industry?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting challenge, actually, because it's sitting at the intersection. Our technology sits at the intersection of med tech and consumer tech. In many ways, people who are adopting insulin delivery technology like the pod or the pump, they shop for insulin pumps or Omnipod the way they shop for a cell phone, because they're going to be living with this technology for a long time and want to be successful with it. So they will try out technologies. They'll go to clinics and learn more about all of the technologies. And when we think about the market as a whole, in the United States, there is approximately 5 to 6 million people in the US that could benefit from our technology. Who live with insulin-dependent diabetes, both type 1 and insulin-dependent type 2. And you ask yourself why. Here we sit. Insulin pumps were developed in the 80s. They were first launched in the 80s. And still today, somebody living with type 1 diabetes, there are only about a third of people living with type 1 use pump or pod therapy. So it's pretty, it has not been broadly adopted, even though it delivers better outcomes, et cetera. And so why is
that? 2/3 are still giving themselves injections?
That's right. Yeah.
Wow.
And so you sort of asked, when I arrived, I said, well, why is that? Right. I knew my experience with my father, and it did take me a long time to convince him to wear an insulin pump.
Really?
Yeah. Years, in fact. And it took a life-threatening situation in order for me to get him onto a pump. And it's because the disease, we just talked, you're making 300 decisions a day. If you have a little bit of control, you don't want to give that up. You don't want to introduce variables into your day. And so there is a lot of inertia around technology use and patient attitudes and even physician prescriptions. And so, we have to focus really in 3 areas. We have to make the technology as simple to use as possible. Mm-hmm. And we really focus on reducing burden. We don't want to add burden to a patient. We really want to make their lives easier. The second thing is we have to focus on easy access. These technologies, for a variety of reasons that we could talk all day about, are too expensive and too difficult to access. And so we have focused a lot on bringing broad, affordable access to our users. And then the third thing is awareness. Even for well-established pump players that have been in the market since the 80s, very few people could call them out by name. Very few people living with type 1 diabetes. Most people are not aware of the choices that exist. And so those are the 3 areas that we've been focused on. How do we make the technology as simple as possible? Mm-hmm. How do we bring broad, affordable access to users? And how do we make everybody aware that these choices exist for them? And that's been successful for us, and it's been part of what's been driving our growth over the last few years.
Interesting. And you've had great growth. So where does that growth come from then? Because this year, there's going to be, I think, at least three different diabetes products coming out, including your Omnipod 5, which we can talk about in a moment. You're not trying to take, I would imagine, as much market share from each other as opposed to trying to draw from that 2/3 to pick your tech.
Well, we've been very focused on what we call the multiple daily injection user. In fact, I would argue that, in fact, I know that, we convert more of those users than other pump players, where it's more of a share game, where durable tubed pumps are trading share among one another. 80% of our new users come from multiple daily injections. And the vast majority of them, more than 60% of them, tell us that they would not have adopted pump or pod therapy if not for Omnipod, because of all the things that we talked about, the complexity of the technology, the cost of the technology. Omnipod has solved for being simple, being affordable, and being discreet. And those things are what's helping us to bring continuous subcutaneous insulin infusion to more people who are just injecting themselves on a daily basis.
Let's talk about the past year. A number of the hospitals slowed down their elective surgeries, quote unquote elective surgeries. You don't have a choice. You can't stop serving your customers clearly during all of this. So talk to me as to how it's been a year. What happened last March? How did you handle this? We can talk about clinical trials in a minute, but first let's focus on what happened in the plant. How did you continue to serve your customers? Sure.
And the question is, what happened last January? Because in fact, we manufacture a good portion of our product in China with a contract manufacturer. Mm-hmm. And so, and I think in some ways that was, a blessing in disguise, because we were able to very quickly learn and then very quickly transport those learnings from China to our U.S. operations. We manufacture a product both in China and in the U.S. And, we organized over 3 principles. We wanted to keep our team safe. We wanted to preserve the well-being of our communities, and we wanted to get pods to our customers who were relying on us. And so everything we did to manage our business was with those 3 principles in mind. And so we very quickly implemented all of the safety and operational protocols that we had in China around temperature checks, around nurse screening, and around home testing. Very quickly pulled all of that together in the U.S. Our operations did not miss a beat. We we shut down in China at the very beginning, but we're very quickly put tactics in place to get back up and running safely. And in the US, we didn't miss a beat. Our operations continued without any issue. And actually, we've been operating all during this pandemic. And, I think when we think about, so that's operations, right? We were able to continue to keep continuity of our supply chain, continued to keep continuity of our operations. Then the next question was, well, how are we going to support bringing users onto technology? Because now, patients aren't going into the physician's office. Many physician clinics were closed. Some had started to adopt telehealth, but, it was pretty spotty in the beginning. And so we very rapidly rolled out virtual training tools, virtual support tools for our clinics to be able to continue to bring new users onto Omnipod. I think those were some great learnings for us because we learned very quickly that we were making assumptions that were probably false, that we assumed we had to have a clinician directly train a user, that was the best way to do it. In fact, we learned that's not true. Patients can very comfortably get up and running on the technology in the comfort of their own home.
Interesting.
And that was a great learning for us. Both users that live with type 2 and users that live with type 1, very effectively trained at home. And in some cases, a much better experience, both for the trainer and for the new customer, because we were able to, for example, train an entire family in a sitting where you wouldn't really have that opportunity if they have to travel to a clinic to get trained. The trainer was able to see more information, interacting with somebody at home than they might get in the clinic. And so all of those things were very helpful. And I think demonstrated in just how well embraced and well reviewed our virtual training tools were. I
would also think they're just more comfortable. I mean, we can denigrate Zoom conversations all you want, but you're right. You're in your own home as opposed to being sitting on some bench in some doctor's office. It's just
and the anxiety that comes with being in a physician's office. And so you think, we train very young kids in some cases and older, less tech savvy people, and to make sure that they're comfortable in their environment so that they can ask the questions that come to mind and train others in the family. It's very helpful. The other area that we've been focused on is preserving the well-being of our communities. And so we've been very involved in, volunteer efforts in providing PPE throughout the whole year to our first responders in the Metro Northwest area. So, it's been wonderful just to see our team give back to the community and not just focus on our tasks, but also supporting everybody in this area.
Did you benefit from, you mentioned before that you're responsible for benefits and reimbursement and sort of helping with all of that. Did you benefit from the relaxation from payers regarding telehealth visits?
Well, I think telehealth was certainly helpful for us. We don't actually submit for reimbursement for healthcare, but we saw that in the endo's office, last year in 2020, visits were down pretty significantly. In the first half of the year, 70% reduction in patient visits to the endo office. And some of that then was offset by telehealth. So telehealth then made up for another 20% of that. Where we were able to have physician-patient interactions. So that's helpful, that our clinicians can continue to serve patients and identify users that, might benefit from Omnipod.
So while we're talking about payers, I'm just curious, how is the environment changing for reimbursement for these sort of devices?
Well, this has been a big part of our strategy. We have been driving and frankly, we've been disrupting the old treatment paradigms and care models with Omnipod. Traditionally, a tubed insulin pump and Omnipod up until 2 years ago, they were reimbursed through the durable medical equipment channel. We saw an opportunity to bring Omnipod through the pharmacy as opposed to the durable medical equipment channel to make it more broadly available and also to eliminate the upfront cost. So in the durable medical equipment channel, what happens is somebody for insulin pump therapy, typically a payer or a user is charged a few $1,000s up front for the insulin pump, and then they are locked into a 4-year contract. And this is why payers put a bunch of hurdles in place for adoption of the technology, because they want to make sure that the user is motivated so that they get the outcomes benefit and that the user is going to stick with it for the 4-year contract that they're paying upfront for. We thought, well, this isn't a very consumer-friendly model, and it's one of the hurdles to getting more people to adopting pump or pod technology. And so we started to explore the pharmacy channel. And what we did in the pharmacy channel was we eliminated all upfront cost. We said that a user or a payer only needs to pay for the pods, presumably as the user is using them and getting the outcomes benefits from them.
Oh, I see.
And and that then eliminated a lot of the upfront barriers that payers put in place for users to adopt the technology. And we didn't lock anybody into any type of time frame. You can try the technology for free. And we just know that we've got great loyalty rates and great retention rates, and that if somebody tries it, they're going to want to use it. And so that's what we rely on to keep our customers and to win our customers. And it's enabled us to bring our technology to a lot more people who otherwise wouldn't have access to it.
The pods are recharged by another cartridge is purchased and the old cartridge is removed. They're disposable.
They're disposable. Our pods are disposable. Yep. So it really is perfectly suited for the pharmacy channel. Because it is where people living with diabetes are going to get their continuous glucose monitors, their blood glucose strips, their insulin. And this is simply, very similar in concept, right? It's a disposable, recurring revenue model that's very well suited to the pharmacy channel. Let's
talk briefly about Omnipod 5. And then I'd also like to just kind of wrap up with what's in the future, how you're innovating, and what's to come next. But talk about Omnipod 5, what's different about it. And you've also had some recent collaborations, which I think this is related to, that maybe we could speak to as well.
Sure. Great. So Omnipod 5 is our automated insulin delivery system. And what that for short we call AID. And what an AID is a continuous glucose monitor communicating directly to an insulin pump or pod with an algorithm. And that's what Omnipod 5 is, but it is incredibly differentiated. We are in partnership for this first generation with Dexcom. And so the Dexcom and the pod speak directly to each other. There's a sophisticated algorithm that is on the pod. Wow. And that algorithm takes a CGM reading every 5 minutes. And based on that reading, it looks out an hour in the future and it predicts where your blood glucose is going. And then it gives you a micro dose of insulin every 5 minutes to keep you in range. So this is incredible because we talked about the 300 decisions that somebody living with diabetes has to make every day. What this does is dramatically reduce those number of decisions and the cognitive burden of diabetes. There will still be a few situations where a user has to, for example, when they eat, they'll still have to announce a meal and dose for the carbohydrates. But the rest of it is highly automated. What it is showing in pre-pivotal data is an incredible improvement in time in range, incredible control in terms of hypoglycemia. And users rated the usability of the system up there with an iPhone. That's so right. Really easy to use and really terrific control. So we could not be more excited. This has been one of the most anticipated innovations in all of the diabetes pipeline, not just Insulet's pipeline. And one of the really exciting things we're delivering with this is phone control. So you'll be able to control the system by a secure app on your mobile phone. And so we get to eliminate the remote controller of the system, and a user will simply put on a pod, put on a Dexcom sensor, download an app, and be able to be off to the races managing their diabetes. So very, very exciting.
So that's how they would announce a meal through they previously would have done it through a remote that you provide, but in the future, it'll be through an app on a phone.
That's right. Yeah. Wow. So it's really, really exciting, really easy to use, and a lot of benefits for us being able to go directly to the phone, securely be able to communicate with these devices.
That's outstanding. And how about your relationship with Abbott? What's that going to lead to?
So Abbott's our next generation. We have great partnerships with both Dexcom and Abbott, and have announced that we will be integrating with their future technologies. So Dexcom has a very exciting pipeline, and we will integrate with those technologies. And Abbott Libre obviously has been, exploding in growth, and we have a partnership with Abbott, and that's in development as well. So our next generation system will integrate with both Abbott and Dexcom. And then, a lot of exciting things around phone platforms. The first system that we launched this year, which will launch in just a few months, will be controlled via an app on your Android phone, and future generation will be iOS. So very excited about that.
That's great. Did you have thoughts about developing your own sensors, or were you always planning on a partnership? Because I think that's a real interesting way to go.
I think if you look at what Dexcom and Abbott have done in the marketplace, it's pretty extraordinary. And both, it is a very sophisticated, very difficult to manufacture technology. And so we feel like we've got great partnerships with them. There's some really interesting technologies on the horizon. There might be 40 early stage CGMs in development. So we'll see how the market plays out. But we could not be more delighted with our partnerships with Abbott and Dexcom.
And final question, just looking at the future, innovation-wise, where do the good ideas come from? I feel as if you're probably really engaged with your users, your patients, and really trying to understand what they need as opposed to just technological advancement. But what does R&D look like? What does that process look like? And what will Insulet be providing this community in 4 or 5 years? What's next?
Yeah. I think you're right that, that intimacy with our customers is what drives our innovation. And so we've got incredible capabilities around human factors, user interface research, where we engage, Omnipod users, we engage multiple daily injection users, we engage tube pump users to really help us inform our technologies. And so that intimacy with our end user is part of our whole innovation from concept development through to delivering of the technology. When we think about where we're focused one on simplicity. We know that the cognitive burden of this disease is incredible, and our advantage is in the simplicity of our pod, but we see opportunity to drive more and more simplicity for people living with diabetes across every aspect of how they interface with our technology and also across our innovative access models. We're focused on outcomes. This step up with Omnipod 5 and the algorithm and the integration with CGM enables us to make a massive impact on outcomes. We will take people who are, in the 60% time in range, and we will move them into the 70-75% time in range. It is a massive improvement in outcomes. But we see this is just the beginning, and we can continue to advance our algorithm and data science to be able to deliver better outcomes over the long term. We see empowerment. It's really interesting when you think about where we are with data. With Omnipod 5, we now get all of the CGM data coming in. We get how the user is interfacing with the system. We get the insulin delivery data, and then how that's impacting the CGM. That is an incredible amount of data for us to deliver insights back to the user. Insights like, every time you work out on Tuesday, you go low, you may want to consider adjusting your setting, things like that. So that insight allows us to empower our users. And then as you think about now we're on the phone. So if the user consents, we may have access to their calendar, to their open table reservations, to all sorts of pieces of data that could give us insights to help empower our users. We might say where you ate dinner at on Thursday night, right? You should have bolused, or you could have bolused bigger to get a better outcome there. Those are the types of things that are really exciting in terms of where this could go to generate insights for our users, for clinicians, and for payers over the horizon. So a lot of really exciting stuff. And, we are particularly differentiated in the type 2 space. We haven't talked a lot about that, but we have significant advantages there. And so when we think about our innovation pipeline, diabetes, and in particular, type 2 diabetes, is a global epidemic. It is growing in crazy proportions across the globe. And we have, we believe, technologies and innovations that are going to really help address what is one of the most, significant world health problems across the globe.
Does type 2, and I'm ignorant about this, but does that usually require some insulin treatment?
About 10% of people who live with type 2 diabetes. It's a progressive disease. So people will fail lifestyle modification, and they'll fail medical management, and eventually progress into insulin therapy. And that's really where Omnipod comes in. And its simplicity and its access model through the pharmacy are particularly important for people living with type 2 diabetes.
Interesting. Well, this has been a really fascinating conversation. I've learned a ton. Shacey, thanks for joining us on the podcast.
Oh, it's been great, Tom. Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, it was a fantastic conversation with Shacey Petrovic of Insulet. Great to talk to her, and to have a Massachusetts CEO on the program. Yay, Bay State.
Woo, Bay State.
Chris Newmarker, where can folks find you on the old social?
Hey, you can find me on LinkedIn, Chris Newmarker, just like a Newmarker. I'm on Twitter @Newmarker. And, I'm doing that Clubhouse thing a little bit with you, Tom. When can people join us on Monday?
We will be on Monday at 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time. We will have Chris Newmarker will be there to talk about the Newmarker's Newsmakers, but we're also going to have a great conversation about biomedical programs and how they help entrepreneurs create new companies and learn how to find shortcomings in the healthcare industry. So it'll be a great conversation. I
don't know these Monday Clubhouses, I'm kind of like treating them a bit like, hey, this is like, in a way, it's like the old-fashioned newspaper open house. It's like, come on in, have a chat with the editor. If there's some news you think that really needs to be covered, come on in.
No, this. Or if you have a story to tell of your own about your own entrepreneurial efforts, we certainly would love to hear what you're up to. Please, it's a great up.
If you have a critique of something, always open for ways to make myself better. Happier when you have something nice to say about something we did. I'd love to hear that. It's like, it's good to develop.
I may Piers Morgan it though. I may Piers Morgan it and walk off if people are too critical of me. I just walk off and say, I can't take this.
I'm not. I'm not that. I'm willing to. I'm always willing to listen. It's all good.
I am also on the Clubhouse @MedTechTom. I'm on Twitter @MedTechTom, and of course on LinkedIn. So please do connect with us there. Please do share this podcast on LinkedIn and on Twitter. And if you do tag Chris and myself, we'd love to be part of that conversation. And Chris is absolutely right. We'd love to see you on Clubhouse at 11:30 a.m. And please do bring any comments, criticisms, or thoughts of what we can do to make the podcast better. It's great to be able to hear directly from folks. But certainly hope you have enjoyed this conversation. Once again, share it. Once again, subscribe. If you subscribe, you'll get it along with hundreds of other people before we post it on social media. So it doesn't hurt to push the subscribe button and make sure
subscribe, like, share.
Do it all.
Do it.
And tune in next week. We'll have another great episode of the Device Talks weekly podcast waiting for you.
Hey, take care. Remember to set your clocks for an hour on Saturday night. Subscribe, like, share. Do it.